Let's take a moment right now and talk about some of the mental challenges that you're sure to run into on a long distance bicycle tour. Because for most people planning a long distance bike trip, say 14 days or longer, there are three major hurdles that you're bound to encounter. The first major hurdle that pretty much everyone that plans a bike tour of any length is going to run into is this hurdle that pops up before your bike tour even begins. And the hurdle is the anxiety that comes with the unknown. Most people, when they begin planning their bicycle tour, they're filled with excitement. They're excited about the idea of getting out there and traveling long distances and meeting new people and seeing new things. It's really exciting to think about what it's going to be like to hit the road on your bicycle. But as the trip draws closer and the reality of your bike tour becomes even more apparent, like it's coming up in a few days, a lot of people start to freak out with anxiety. They get nervous. Are all my ducks in a row? Do I have everything figured out? Do I have all the gear I'm going to need? What happens if something goes wrong? All of these thoughts start running through your head. I know that for me, I have been bike touring now for almost 2 decades all around the world, and I still get this anxiety right before my bike trip is about to begin. I'm still nervous, and I'm still thinking through in the back of my mind as I lay in bed at night in the days leading up to my bike tour. Do I have everything I need? Is my bike in good condition? What's it going to be like in this strange place that I'm planning to go bicycle touring? I've never been there before. What are the people going to be like? Is it going to be safe? What happens if I can't find internet or whatever? Like, there's a million things running through my head in those days leading up to the tour. So that is the first challenge that you are going to run into. And for a lot of people, like, that hurdle alone is very difficult to get over. Like, you might have a lot of fear actually about getting out on the road on your bicycle trip, but you can't let that fear prevent you from conducting that bike tour that you've been working so hard toward. So just know that the anxiety that you are feeling before your bike tour begins is completely normal, and pretty much anybody that goes on a long distance bike trip, especially a long distance bike trip, is going to be feeling those same feelings. The second major hurdle that you're going to run into on any long distance bike tour is something that pops up in the first 1 to 3 days or so. As I've said kind of in many of my videos on BicycleTouringPro.com, the first 3 days or so, and that can vary from, it can be 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, even 5 days perhaps. But during those first, say, 1 to 3 days of your trip, that is where most of the challenges associated with bicycle touring are going to pop up. So during those first 3 days, like, you're trying to figure out how fast should I ride. You're trying to work out any problems with your bicycle, like maybe your seat's at the wrong height, or you need to adjust your handlebars a little bit. You're figuring out how to ride with your partner. You're figuring out how to figure out how far you should ride on any given day. You're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep at night. So all of that stuff is new to you during the first 3 or so days of your bike trip. And some people settle in quicker than others, but usually the first 3 days for a lot of people are super, super challenging. Not only from a physical standpoint, especially if you haven't done a lot of training, but from a mental standpoint as well. Just thinking, like I said, like if you're planning a 14-day bike tour and you're only 2 days in, it can be somewhat mentally challenging to think, oh my goodness, I have 12 days left, and the first 2 days were pretty difficult. So that's why this hurdle is especially difficult for a lot of people, and it's also why so many people quit their bike tours during the first 3 days. It's because they let the little challenges that pop up during that time period, the mechanical problems, the weather problems, the problems with their partner or whatever, stop them entirely from continuing with their bicycle tour. Whatever unpleasantries they might be experiencing during those first 3 days, they think that those unpleasantries are going to continue throughout the rest of the bicycle tour. But what usually happens is that after 3 days or 4 days or 5 days or whatever it is, most people tend to settle into the bike tour and start to become really comfortable. If you can just get past those first 3 days, knowing that the first 3 days are going to be the most challenging part of your bicycle tour from both a physical and mental standpoint, then you can push through that, most people can at least, push through that knowing that once they do that, the rest of their bike tour is going to be a whole lot easier. So you just got to know that going into your bike tour. The first day is going to be difficult. The second day probably going to be difficult. The third day is going to be a little bit easier. It might be difficult as well, but the fourth day, there's like some magic that happens, and where you suddenly wake up in the morning and you're like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm comfortable doing it, and this is going to be awesome. And so just know that going in. First 3 days are difficult, and you got to be both mentally and physically prepared for that. Finally, the last major hurdle that you're bound to encounter on a long distance bicycle tour is something that pops up when you've been on the road for about 14 days or longer, and it's going to vary. Some people it might be 10 days, some people it might be 20 days, some people it might be much, much longer than that actually. But what happens after about 14 days is that you become so comfortable on the road that your bike tour is no longer a challenge, and you have to figure out other ways to make your bicycle touring trip interesting. So the first 3 days are going to be super challenging. Days 3 through 14, you're going to be like in the groove, really enjoying the bike touring experience. And then after that, especially on a long distance tour, like if you're going for 90 days or 100 days or 365 days or longer, you got to figure out after you get past, the first 2 weeks of your trip, how are you going to make your trip exciting for yourself so that you can wake up every day and look forward to the bike ride that you have planned. Now, I can't really give you the answer of how to get over this 14-day hump, but I think just knowing that that hump exists is going to help you during the planning and preparation process of your bicycle tour so that you can go into the trip knowing that, okay, I'm going to be a little nervous in the days leading up to the tour. I'm going to be maybe struggling both physically and mentally during the first 3 days of the trip, and that's completely normal. I'll settle into the groove after that. Days 3 to 14, I'll be in the groove, and it's normal to, after about 14 days or so, start to feel like you're so comfortable on the road that you need to figure out a way to do something else. And that's why on longer bike trips, I always recommend people have other activities or interests that they bring or carry with them on their bike trips so that they can stop and do other things besides ride their bikes. All right, that's all I have to say about the 3 major hurdles you're bound to encounter on a long-distance bicycle tour. If you have any questions about anything I mentioned in this video, make sure you leave a comment down below, and you can also reach me inside the Bicycle Touring Pro private Facebook group. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.